Bernard "Bernie" Madoff was once a respected figure on Wall Street. He was the chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, a pioneer in electronic trading, and the founder of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC. To the outside world, he was a financial genius, a philanthropist, and a trusted advisor. But behind this facade lay one of the most elaborate financial frauds in history, a Ponzi scheme that duped thousands of investors out of $65 billion. This is the story of how Bernie Madoff orchestrated the largest financial fraud in U.S. history, the lives he destroyed, and the lessons we can learn from his deception. Bernie Madoff was born on April 29, 1938, in Queens, New York. He grew up in a middle-class Jewish family and attended Hofstra University, where he studied political science. In 1960, at the age of 22, Madoff started his own investment firm with $5 he had saved from working as a lifeguard and installing sprinkler systems. Madoff's firm initially focused on trading penny stocks, but he quickly expanded into more sophisticated financial instruments. By the 1980s, he had become a prominent figure on Wall Street, known for his innovative use of technology in trading. His firm was one of the first to use computerized trading systems, which gave him a competitive edge. Madoff's reputation grew, and he became a trusted advisor to wealthy individuals, charities, and institutional investors. He was known for delivering consistent, above-average returns, even during market downturns. This consistency attracted more investors, and his client base grew exponentially. The term Ponzi scheme comes from Charles Ponzi, an Italian swindler who duped investors in the 1920s. In a Ponzi scheme, the fraudster promises high returns to investors, but uses money from new investors to pay off earlier ones. There is no real investment or profit-generating activity. The scheme relies on a constant influx of new money to keep it afloat. Madoff's scheme began in the early 1990s, although some speculate it may have started even earlier. He offered investors steady returns of 10 to 12% annually, regardless of market conditions. These returns were too good to be true, but Madoff's reputation and charm convinced people to trust him. Madoff's strategy was simple. He would take money from new investors and use it to pay returns to earlier investors. He created fake account statements and trade confirmations to make it appear as though the money was being invested in the stock market. In reality, the money was simply being shuffled around. Madoff's scheme was incredibly sophisticated. He used his firm's legitimate trading operations as a cover for his fraudulent activities. Here's how it worked. 1. Attracting investors. Madoff targeted wealthy individuals, charities, and institutional investors. He relied heavily on word-of-mouth referrals, often recruiting new clients through country clubs, exclusive events, and personal connections. 2. Fake returns. Madoff promised consistent, above-average returns. He claimed to use a split-strike conversion strategy, which involved buying and selling options to hedge against market risk. In reality, no such trades were taking place. 3. Fake statements. Madoff's firm generated fake account statements and trade confirmations. These documents were meticulously crafted to show steady growth, even during market downturns. 4. Secrecy and exclusivity. Madoff cultivated an air of exclusivity. He often turned away potential investors, which only made his fund more desirable. He also discouraged clients from asking too many questions, claiming that his strategy was too complex to explain. 5. The illusion of legitimacy. Madoff's reputation as a Wall Street pioneer and his involvement in regulatory organizations like the Nasdaq gave him an air of legitimacy. Many investors assumed that someone with his credentials couldn't possibly be running a scam. Madoff's scheme didn't just affect wealthy individuals, it devastated thousands of lives. Many of his victims were retirees who lost their life savings. Charities and non-profit organizations were also hit hard, with some forced to shut down entirely. One of the most heartbreaking stories is that of Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate and Holocaust survivor. Wiesel and his foundation lost $15 million to Madoff. Wiesel later described Madoff as a thief and a scoundrel who had betrayed the trust of his victims. Another victim, Denise Applebaum, lost her entire inheritance. She had invested $5 million with Madoff, hoping to secure her financial future. When the scheme collapsed, she was left with nothing. The emotional toll was immense. Many victims felt a deep sense of shame and betrayal. Some even took their own lives, unable to cope with the financial and emotional devastation. The 2008 financial crisis was the beginning of the end for Madoff's scheme. As the markets crashed, many investors began to withdraw their money. Madoff, however, didn't have the funds to meet these redemptions. The scheme was on the verge of collapse. In December 2008, Madoff confessed to his sons, Mark and Andrew, that his investment business was a fraud. He estimated the losses at $50 billion. His sons immediately reported him to the authorities. On December 11, 2008, Madoff was arrested by the FBI. The news sent shockwaves through the financial world. Investors, regulators, and the media were stunned. How had one man managed to pull off such an elaborate fraud for so long? Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. In June 2009, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. The fallout from the scandal was immense. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, which had failed to uncover the fraud despite multiple red flags, faced intense scrutiny. Several SEC officials resigned, and the agency implemented reforms to improve its oversight of financial markets. A court-appointed trustee, Irving Picard, was tasked with recovering funds for Madoff's victims. Over the years, Picard has recovered billions of dollars through lawsuits and settlements. However, many victims have received only a fraction of their losses. Madoff's family was also deeply affected. His son Mark committed suicide in 2010, and his brother Peter was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his role in the fraud. Madoff's wife, Ruth, was not charged but lost much of her wealth and social standing. The Bernie Madoff scandal serves as a cautionary tale for investors and regulators alike. Here are some key lessons. 1. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Madoff's consistent above-average returns were a major red flag. Investors should be wary of any investment that promises guaranteed returns. 2. Transparency matters. Madoff's lack of transparency should have been a warning sign. Investors should always ask questions and demand clear, detailed explanations of how their money is being invested. 3. Diversify your investments. Many of Madoff's victims had invested all or most of their savings with him. Diversification can help protect against catastrophic losses. 4. Regulatory oversight is crucial. The SEC's failure to uncover Madoff's fraud highlights the need for stronger regulatory oversight. Investors should advocate for reforms to prevent similar scams in the future. Bernie Madoff's name has become synonymous with greed, deception, and betrayal. His scheme not only destroyed lives but also eroded trust in the financial system. While Madoff is now serving a life sentence, the scars he left behind will take decades to heal. As we reflect on this scandal, we must remember the importance of vigilance, transparency, and accountability. Only by learning from the past can we hope to prevent similar frauds in the future.